Thank you, Vian, and good morning, everybody. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the contribution made by Arthur Chapman and the team from Blue North to this project. All right, I think we all know by now that Hortgrow takes climate change very seriously. So climate change, decreasing water availability and quality, and also the increase in extreme weather conditions are three of the biggest risks identified by Hortgrow for the future of this industry. So Hortgrow Science funded the development of a climate change response strategy for the South African palm and stone fruit industries. It was agreed from the outset that the strategy must be science-based, co-developed with industry stakeholders to ensure relevance and clear prioritization of climate risks and solutions. Also, the strategy must respond to specific regional needs, the needs of both stone and palm fruit growers, the needs of value chain actors, and adaptive and mitigative actions for both the near-term period, which is 2030 to 40, and the mid-term period towards the middle of the century. This is a summary of the timeline of the research process. In summary, the process started with the identification of climate change scenarios for the future that were then taken into 12 workshops. The first 9 workshops were grower workshops in 9 different production regions across the country. The next 2 were the Hortgrow workgroup members, who are mainly researchers and technical experts, and then lastly the value chain workshop. And the information we gleaned from all these workshops, we collated, we analyzed, we used multi-criteria analysis to identify the priority risks, climate change risks, and also the priority adaptation and mitigation responses that were then developed into the strategy. This table on the left shows the 9 different grower regions, and on the left-hand side you can see all the different risks that were identified. In the scenarios, we looked both at climate change trends, so gradual changes over time, and shocks, so extreme weather events. And the gradual ones are shown in orange and the extremes are shown in red. You can see that there's a lot of similarity between some of the regions, and then further down you'll see some of the risks were identified only by specific regions. On the right-hand side, this is the result of the risks analysis using MCA. And so the ranking, it's quite interesting, in the top 7 highest risk rankings, 4 of them were water-related, which is not surprising. The second one was the decrease in winter chilling. The fourth one was the warming and the increase on heat waves and extreme heat. And the fifth one was the change in hail, which also has a high impact, which gave it a high ranking. I'm going to summarize, I'm not going to detail the adaptation and mitigation options that were highlighted by the participants and prioritized through the MCA. So from the growers and the advisors and researchers workshops, we separated adaptation options and mitigation options. Under adaptation, the most important one is using water effectively, application, in other words, irrigation, soil cover, protective netting, cultivar and rootstock choices, proactive planning, relevant information, and water resource management. Under mitigation, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the industry, the 2 top ones are the resource and energy use efficiency. Those are seen as low-hanging fruit that we can start with to get emissions to be reduced. Then switching gradually to alternative energy sources, soil carbon sequestration, and carbon footprinting. The value chain was most concerned about the carbon intensity of the product that is sent into the international markets. We know that there's increasing pressure, especially when people make comparisons with our product and other competitor countries. So the carbon intensity, there was a concern that that might even increase given some of the adaptation options that we need to implement. Product quality is of concern, logistical capacity, financial implications, supply reliability, and market window. So the strategy focuses on 4 areas. The first area is to build climate resilience and adaptive capacity. And the various actions that are listed under those, I've just grouped them into themes. The first theme is water use and management. This is by far the most important one. And this covers actions such as regional water resource planning, irrigation technology, infrastructure maintenance, and risk reduction of water quality challenges and potential disasters that can happen when water quality disasters happen. Then I just want to show one slide to show that under each of these actions, there's a lot of information in the strategy about the actual actions that need to be taken. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's more actions. The implementation level, so who's going to implement, the time frames, and also the spatial focus. I'm not going to show all of those. Getting to another one of strategic focus 1 themes is something we would call nature-based solutions possibly. So that covers soil cover, cover crops, for example, and management, and also ecosystem management, basically ecological infrastructure, which means looking after your environment that provides services to you on your farm, often relating to clearing invasives and looking after your river systems. The third one then, projective technologies, and that would include effective and sustainable use of netting, and also effective frost protection in some areas, and adapted genetics. So using the best available adapted crops, cultivars, and rootstocks in specific areas. Then lastly, post-harvest and value chain. And for this one, there was a lot of interest in pursuing or increasing the focus on post-harvest quality relating to growing season climate stress. I think there's a lot of research on that already happening, and also technological innovation to solve climate-related challenges across the value chain. The second focus is around the transition to low-carbon fruit production and the value chain, and those are really all the ones I mentioned around mitigation, so moving towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions in various ways. And the last one that I've listed here is starting the discussion in the industry with role players on how to develop that pathway towards an industry-level net zero emissions by 2050 as a long-term target. Then strategic focus 3 is strengthening formal enablers. What we mean by formal enablers is really hard infrastructure, for example, strengthening the transport infrastructure and reducing emissions from transport, the water infrastructure, access to finance, and also regulatory pitfalls, in other words, reducing red tape. And then we have the informal enablers, which are what you might call the soft options, but they're by no means less important. In some cases, I think they're equally, possibly more important than some of the hard options. And that is all about increasing availability, accessibility of relevant contextual information. This was highly prioritized by all the grower groups. Strengthening skills development across the value chain for climate change response, and also driving a dialogue with the market to encourage understanding and empathy for the mitigation burden, which is a real risk to our industry. We made 7 recommendations to Hortgrow and to take this forward into implementation. The first one is to sort the proposed actions into implementation pathways based on urgency and also resources that are already available or need to be sought. Identifying the Hortgrow champion who will take ownership of this and take it forward in the industry. Identifying high impact co-benefits and to leverage maximum value add regardless of the climate change trajectory. Nurture and develop the next generation who will take this forward. Continue to build partnerships with industry, with other industries, and with government. Integrating the suggested options into the Hortgrow Science Research Program, and rolling out dissemination and communication of the strategy. It's very pleasing to note that Hortgrow is already taken action, implementing the strategy. So both on the Hortgrow Science side, there's already been an assessment of past and current research projects that link in with the strategy, also gaps and things that might be needed in future. And then on the Hortgrow sustainability and resource management program side, Natasha's told me that there's already a lot of emphasis on implementation of some of the recommendations, so transitioning to low carbon fruit production and value chain, communicating and raising awareness of the importance of responsible use of resources such as water, energy, soil, fertilizers and chemicals. You will all know that the Hortgrow Footprint webinar series is also already being rolled out, and also the sharing of innovative technologies, mitigation measures, case studies and demonstration projects. I'd like to thank Hortgrow for the funding for this opportunity to help develop the strategy, and of course also the project steering committee members and all the workshop participants for their time, interest and valuable inputs. Thank you.